Hey everybody, today we are reading Fire and Frost, Crystal Frost series, book 1 by Alicia Rades. Um, so I have gotten really into this book and I don't want to stop reading it. So today we're going to be reading it. Chapter 9. I woke up to find Mom and Teddy at the breakfast table. I poured myself a bowl of cereal and joined them. Well, I have to take off, Teddy announced. He rose from the table and carried his dishes to the sink. I have some paperwork at the station. I need to get ready before the week starts. You girls have a good day. My mother smiled up at him. She'd once told me that having a policeman as a boyfriend made her feel like she was dating a superhero. Teddy's eyes fell on the owl necklace around my neck as he exited the room. You have a good day. You have a good day too, Teddy Bear, I called after him. When we were alone with our last few bites of breakfast, my mother spoke. So, how are you holding up? Holding up? I think your engagement is awesome. I love Teddy. She set down her fork and looked at me across the table with a serious expression on her face. That's not what I meant. I want to know how you're handling your abilities. Sometimes growing up can bring them out a bit. What? Is she saying that I saw Olivia because I started my period? I had to admit, the events did seem to coincide. I think I'm fine, I answered. It's just all so confusing. I know, she agreed, adding a sense of I've been there before to her tone. It's just that we didn't get to finish our conversation, and I wanted you to be able to ask questions. I thought about this for a moment. What did I want to know? Did I even want to be a psychic? To have this burden over my head? This secret that I would have to hide from everyone, even the people I loved the most? Did I want to go through with what my mother went through? Maybe I could suppress my abilities. I had lived in Peyton Springs my whole life, but what if people found out? What would happen to divination if the community discovered that the owners were really psychic? Would they drive us away or welcome us with open arms? At the same time, I knew there had to be some good to come from it. If I could prevent a tragedy like my father's death by learning how to recognize my dreams as visions, then that was something I was willing to do. As much as it confused me, I wanted to be psychic to embrace the world beyond this one and not to run and hide from who I was. I met my mother's gaze again, knowing exactly what I wanted to ask. Will you teach me? Her face lit up. Mom was walking too fast to process anything she was... Mom was talking too fast to process anything she was saying. Slow down, I begged, as we neared divination. Sophie was the one running the shop this weekend, but Mom wanted to bring me in and teach me about the art of being psychic. It was early on a Sunday morning, so there weren't a lot of people out shopping yet. When we entered divination, there were 2 girls who I recognized from middle school trying on costumes in the dressing room. Other than that, the shop was void of customers. When the bell above the door rang, Sophie looked up from the costume she was organizing. What a surprise! Have you come to take over my shift? She joked. No, my mom laughed as she gestured to Sophie to follow her toward the back. Crystal, can you stay here just in case anyone comes in and needs help? I had worked in the shop in the past, but since I started high school, I rarely came in here. My mom walked towards the break room while I took a seat on the stool behind the front counter. The shop looked a lot different than I remembered since it was Halloween. Any typically empty spaces on the walls were covered in fake cobwebs, and the normal contents of the store were gone, replaced with rows of costumes. I glanced around and focused on the girls trying on costumes. "Oh my gosh, look at this amazing Roman costume," one of them raved from the dressing rooms toward my right. "I hate this very costume. It's so itchy." The other one said, "I'm going to find a different one." She exited the dressing room and roamed the shop on her own. Clearly, she didn't need any help. Seeing as I wasn't needed, I rose from my chair and slipped around the corner. I ran my fingers across some of the costumes, but none of them stood out too much. I wanted to dress up for Halloween, but I was too old for trick-or-treating. A lot of people dressed up for the community festival. Maybe I could find a costume for that. I flipped through the costumes on their hangers, but found nothing interesting in that row. So I turned to the row behind me. From out of the corner of my eye, I noticed something sparkling from the next room. The building used to have several shops in it, so there was a wall separating the two main rooms with an open entryway between them. The other room was usually full of things like tarot cards, crystal balls, and magic kits. As I peeked over the clothes rack, the sparkling caught my eye as bright waves of light danced around the room. "What is that?" I wondered. I was too intrigued to let it sparkle without investigation. The young girl's laughter near the dressing room faded into non-existence as I carried myself into the other room. The light glowed in my eyes, pulling me in. It played tunes of blissfulness and tranquility in my head. Without realizing it, I reached out and wrapped my hands around the source of the light. In my hand sat a glowing crystal ball. Its energy reached out to me and sent waves of happiness from my head to my toes. For a moment, it seemed as if the crystal ball and I were the only things in the world. "Crystal," my mother called, pulling me away from my trance. The other objects in the room returned to my vision, and the light, I don't know what the word is, emanating from the ball faded. All that was left in my hands was a regular crystal ball. I turned around to see her standing in the doorway. "Mom," I answered, dazed. "Can I get this?" I held out the crystal ball, showing her my new-found treasure. "It's just a regular crystal ball." She inched into the room and headed over to the fancier balls they had on display, the ones with elegant bases or unique colors. "You don't want one of these more decorative ones?" "I want this one," I told her, showing it to her once again as if it were a 5-pound diamond. My next words came out as a whisper. "Mom, it speaks to me." I didn't think she heard me. She waved her hand like she didn't care. "Sure, get whatever crystal ball you want." I jumped in excitement and snatched up the base from the display. It was a simple stainless steel base with 4 legs. I exited the room and placed the ball on the front counter so I would remember it when we left. My mother followed behind me with a few products in her hands. Sophie had returned and was again organizing costumes on their racks. I eyed her. Sophie was a psychic too. What kind of abilities did she have? "What did you talk to Sophie about?" I followed my mother into the break room, which was a small room about the size of my bedroom with hooks and lockers against one wall and a counter against the other. In the middle of the room stood a square table with chairs placed around it. Well, I told her I was getting married. I also told her why we were here. My mother sat down the products in her arms on the break table and gestured for me to sit down. The first thing she grabbed was a deck of tarot cards. I pushed myself away from the table. "Mom, I don't want to do this whole tarot card thing." She already had the deck out of the box, and as soon as I said it, her face fell. Tarot card readings were her thing. I knew I'd hurt her the second I said it. "It's just, you've tried showing me this stuff before," I explained, remembering years ago when she tried to get me to help with the Halloween festival. "And I just don't like doing it. I want to learn more about my abilities. I don't think I'll ever be a tarot card reader." She put down the deck as if she understood. Okay, maybe we shouldn't start with this then. How about we start with questions? I had a lot of questions, but I wasn't entirely sure how to ask them. I decided to just start firing away. What types of abilities does Sophie have? She's an empath. She's an empath. I need help.
What?
EMPATH.
Empathist?
Empathist.
I don't know.
An empath. I don't know what it is. She can perceive the emotions of others better than most people and oftentimes can influence them. Thank you. What about Diane? Diane can see past events. Can she see it on demand? No, we only see things we need to. Sometimes you can ask to see certain things. Other times, unimportant visions work their way into your mind, but none of us are strong enough to completely control what we see when we see visions or get feelings. What about you? Can you only see the future? I can see small pieces of the future, but I rarely see things about myself or my family. I sometimes get vague feelings about things, but nothing significant. I can also find things if I have something to touch. It's called psychometry. I paused, digesting this. And what about me? She shifted. Well, from what you said, it sounds like you're a medium. Someone who can see spirits. A medium? But I'd only seen 2 ghosts before. I must not be a very good one, I said, wondering if that was true. A small part of me knew that it probably wasn't. My mother raised her eyebrows. Crystal, you have a natural ability, but using your abilities takes a lot of practice. Everyone is born with the ability to be psychic. But even if you're like us, born with more natural connection to the other side, it takes practice to learn how to control and use your abilities. So let's practice. What? Let's practice. I want to get better. I don't want this to scare me because when I saw Olivia, I almost pissed my pants, Mom. I want to help Olivia. The words shocked even me. Is that why I was so eager to learn about this? My heart felt for Olivia. It really did. I knew by the look in her eyes that she needed help and that only I could help her. You didn't see her in here the other night, did you? I asked my mother. No, she admitted. With all of us put together, I was sure we could at least talk with her, but we didn't have it in us. With this realization struck me like a ton of bricks. Why were you even trying to contact her? My mother dropped her head with shame and avoided my gaze. I felt really bad about it. What, Mom? Why does she need help? It's just, I wasn't supposed to hear. I was eavesdropping. On who? What did you hear? My voice was full of urgency, even though the situation wasn't that dramatic. But I just had to know. I overheard Tammy talking to Cheryl about Olivia at one of our festival meetings. When I heard Olivia's name, I stopped and eavesdropped on them, even though it was supposed to be a private conversation. What did she say? She said that she was scared for her daughter. She admitted that she was having a hard time moving on. She said she could feel her daughter like she was still here and hadn't made it to heaven yet. My mom pressed her lips together. I know I have no place in this, but I just knew when she said this that Olivia needed help moving on. And you thought you could help her, I finished. Mom, don't feel bad. I think it is your place because of what you can do. You have a responsibility to help people in these kinds of situations. I don't know, though, my mom said. I can't even see ghosts. Well, if you don't have a responsibility to Olivia, then I do. She asked me for help, and I can see ghosts. Thank you for listening. That was chapter 9.